name is Elizabeth Nakiru. Thank you for joining us on the Women in Tax show. Today we have a special guest who will be introducing herself and telling us all about the taxation industry as a woman, and to also inspire us and motivate us young ladies and women out there. Thank you so much for joining us, Stella. Kindly introduce yourself.
Thank you for having me here. My name is Stella Nyapendi Chombo. I'm a substantively an assistant commissioner in charge of border affairs, policy and rulings, but currently serving as acting commissioner legal services and border affairs in the Uganda Revenue Authority.
Oh, thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to have you. And the fact that our show is about women, it's always good to have these conversations with women who can speak to other women and encourage them and motivate them. And when we're trying to start up the show, your name came up, and I thought it would be a good opportunity to have you on the show. And we'd just like to know about you, your work, what you do. But we would like to start from the beginning. What was the dream when you started out as a young person?
First of all, I'm really, really honored that you thought it prudent to have me on this show. As an individual, as a woman, my passion is really to impact and encourage others and inspire them to be what they dream to be. So back to the dream, of course, I think it was almost a natural for me to be a lawyer. The issue of being a tax lawyer is another dimension, but being a lawyer was a dream that started from childhood, and this is what triggered it. Sometime when I was in P5, my father, who is an academician, he's a professor, he had just returned from his master's, and that year he returned with so many storybooks, and I recall not playing that holiday because all I did was stay indoors and read and read and read. All those Ladybird books and whatever you can name, I read. Oliver Twist, and I read. I did not play that holiday. And so that built my reading interest, but also in terms of vocabulary, in terms of spelling, I was able to get that. And so the interest in a trade that would enable me deal with words, be a wordsmith, write, research, that was triggered at that point. So it continues, even through school. Of course, naturally, I studied literature in O-level, in A-level, did healthy, and that's what pushes me to law school. Then I get to study as a lawyer. But of course, also studying as a lawyer was informed by something historical that my father told me. I come from Tororo, but my dad tells me that there's a season where there was serious politics, and there were fights between Christians, the Catholics, and the Anglicans. Now, it happened that my grandfather, they were Catholics, but in the neighborhood, there was an Anglican church. So it was Anglicans against Catholics. Now, my grandfather was a policeman. He among the brothers, was put at the boundary that was near the church, the Anglican church, because they believed that he was the stronger one, and then he would use his police profession to be able to deal with the fights and the land border issues. So the land border issues continued. They didn't go his way. He was subsequently imprisoned for that land issue. It was a big fight, as you know, but it was more religious than factual.
There was no issue really, but it was because of the religion.
Yes, so he suffered for the legal issues. And then at that point, my grandfather, whom I didn't see, by the way, said, I wish I had a child who was a lawyer. Then it would maybe be easier, because he struggled to get the legal representation. Eventually, of course, he gets out. He didn't stay long, but that stayed on my father's mind. So my dad kept encouraging me to study law against that backdrop. And the day I graduated, he was so elated, because he kept reminding me of my grandfather's dream. And for that reason, in the family that I come from, I'm the third born, but I'm the first lawyer out of 3. So that impacted, because I have 3 sisters. I lost one, but 3 lawyers for that reason. So he kept encouraging us. And so that is where my path was drawn. Of course, also the kind of personality that I am passionate for people. I'm passionate for justice. And that, again, naturally drives me in that direction, because we'll speak later about the other things that I do other than tax, and that is charity, children, deal with children. There's a charitable organization called God's Grace. I look after them, I advocate for their rights, and just make sure their well-being is in order. Yes.
Stella, you sound like you're very passionate. You sound like a passionate person, you know. And I like that kind of energy. I like to surround myself with that energy, which I think is very good for anyone out there, you know. Sometimes life can box you, but what comes out of you is what matters the most.
Yes.
So you talked about going through law school, you finished it, your dad was so happy and elated. So after law school, you got into the journey of career.
Yes.
How did you start your career from there on?
Thank you, Elizabeth. Starting my career right after the LDC, got into a law firm where I did my clerkship. That is internship for medical students and but for lawyers it's clerkship. So while I was there for 3 months, I did very well with my passion. I know I did very well. Why do I say that? Because when I went back to complete LDC and eventually completed the program, I was now getting ready for the short holiday before I start the job search. My supervisor then, the owner of the law firm, called me and told me, Stella, where are you? There's a job waiting for you. And what he was meaning was that come, you have a job here. You did well while you trained, so you have a chair to sit. And so he invited me over, and that is how I start working. So while there, I graduated LDC while I was in URA, but while there, then I put in my application to join Uganda Revenue Authority, and that was, of course, years back, but that was what started. And then my application, and then that is how my journey began in URA. I was employed as an officer in 2005 August, and I've systematically moved from officer. I was promoted to manager in 2011. Then 2015, I became assistant commissioner, and then here I am, acting commissioner legal services, but of course I'm still a substantive assistant commissioner board affairs. So I've served in that position for 9 years. Yes.
That is such a beautiful history for someone to go through that career growth and length. It's such an interesting journey. So my question would be, at what point did you feel like, now, yes, I have a firm footing in this career and this is what I want to keep doing?
Yes. Of course, from the beginning, I will not say I tax lawyer. I knew I wanted to be a lawyer, but I wanted to be a tax lawyer was determined by my career path, career trends while I joined URA. So when I joined URA, of course, the kind of practice I do is the corporate practice, and that is revolves around the desk work, the transactional work, the tax advisory, the drafting, the contracts. Not necessarily the litigation. I showed a bit of litigation, but that was a very short stint. So I find myself comfortable this other side, which is the tax advisory side. And so very interesting because you get to read again. You research, you advise clients. The URA respective departments, you'll have customs, you'll have taxes, you'll have procurements. They will write and make inquiry regarding the legal position of certain aspects of certain actions, of interpretations of the. And so at that point, you have a chance to do your research and then advise them on them to take. You advise on whether or not a transaction is taxable. You advise on the risky areas. If URA goes this other side is the potential risk. Start to gather potential tax losses. And then you also draft contracts. With service providers, contracts for URA to support URA. We also do a lot of land transactions on behalf of URA because we have a mandate to protect URA property. So URA owns different parcels of land all over the country because we have that countrywide and regional presence. So it's a mandate to make sure that the contracts, the tenancies that come through protect URA as an institution, and that we are not exposed to any losses or any risks or any potential litigations that may arise from our presence in certain areas. And so I found that interesting, but then also the scope is very, very wide. Again, from the talk, you see that that is not limited to tax. There's also another very important aspect of the work that we do in legal, board affairs specifically, and that is the tax policy development. Now, tax is a creature of statute, meaning that for everything that we do in URA, we use the law to collect and to waive whatever it is, to recommend for a waiver. All that is based on the law. Even by our mandate, our mandate by creation, the URA Act. URA was created under the URA Act in 1991, and that gives us a mandate. So we develop policies. That means that for every law, we should be able to advise, to look at any leakages. Are there any loopholes in the law that is making it difficult for us to collect taxes? What can we do to cure? Now, that we do under the annual budget cycle with government, and this we do in tandem with Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Justice. So the role of the Department of Legal Services and Border Affairs basically is to coordinate that process on an annual basis. You look at the existing laws, you look at the cases that URA has been engaged in, and then see whether there are any areas where we can make changes so that we are able to make sure that we have grounded laws that protect both us, but also laws that are simple and clear and not complicated, so that they're understood by the taxpayers and by ourselves. So that tax policy development is a role that we do every year. And it keeps you really going. Very interesting, because you look at the tax trends, and that informs any changes that you might propose for any tax law to make sure that there are no loopholes. Yes.
So speaking about the corporate law, you do the business policy, you do the tax policies, you propose and get out of your way to research and make sure you advise and make sure that the decisions being made are legally protective of URA. So I would want to know, what is that case that you handled and you were happy about, that made it for you? You feel like, yes, I handled this case very well, it worked out, and I think it could be multiple cases or just one case that made you feel proud of yourself in this journey of being at URA and also being a corporate lawyer.
Okay. Thank you, Elizabeth. Now, like I've mentioned, the work of the contribution is the case of Heritage Oil and Gas. This case was a decision that came in 2013, and Uganda won a case against Heritage Oil and Gas. It was a case worth 1.1 trillion shillings in tax, I think like $434 million US. And why I felt proud to be part of URA was that sometime in 2008, I was attached to Ministry of Finance to support in the development of oil and gas laws. That is called Part 9A of the Income Tax Act, the present Income Tax Act. Because as a country, we are now getting ready to explore oil and gas, and we didn't have the legal regime to support oil and gas. So what happens is that while we are developing the policies for oil and gas, we introduced one that is under Section 79. Now, that particular section was determining the sourcing, the capital base, the capital gains tax. So it mentioned capital gains tax. So when they are determining this particular case in court, it was determined in London. I was not part of the team, but like I told you, that tax is a creature of statute. So they used, among others, that section of the law 79 and provisions of Part 9A. Now, those provisions on oil and taxing oil and gas transactions supported in the arguments, both at the Tax Appeals Tribunal, which is what we call our court of first instance, meaning that for any tax matter, if someone is dissatisfied with URA's decision, then you first go to TAT. So these Heritage Oil and Gas objected. They went to TAT. TAT ruled in our favor, URA's favor, and then there was provision for them to go for arbitration. They proceeded to arbitration in London. I was not part of the team, but I was very grateful, and I felt quite proud to know that they used our tax system for Uganda to get that win. So for me, it's one of those landmark cases that remind you that in terms of supporting the URA mandate and having laws that are able to support tax collection, we use those provisions, for which I was part. Yes, and like I mentioned earlier, so that time I was seconded to develop the provisions in Ministry of Finance, because as our supervisors, they take the lead. So I was seconded for about 4 months. We developed that part of the oil and gas laws, and that was the result. Laws that were able to help us defend that case when the time came.
So the tax was collected.
Yes, 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 yes.
That is very interesting.
Yes.
And like I mentioned earlier, you're very passionate. What drives you? What is your fire that keeps you moving? Yeah.
The fire that keeps me moving, the passion is actually passion. I do. That when I set out to do something, I have a desire to succeed. I have a desire to excel. I have a desire to impact. When I'm in a place to perform my mandate, to advise, I really look to making sure I give in my very best shot and ensure that I do the best that I can do in the circumstances. So it's the love for tax justice, and tax justice would be basically making sure people are not unfairly taxed, and that also URA is not treated unfairly in whatever ways. So the challenges that come with tax, the tax collection mandate are what drives me. Tax is interesting. It is an ever-changing kind of industry. You have emerging tax trends. Why? When you look at what came with COVID, people stopped having physical presence for their businesses, and then they start trading online. So at that point, as a taxman, as a tax administrator, you have to be very, very keen to know where to get the money, because it now begins to change, and then you need to still perform your mandate. So the challenges that come with it, it's interesting to see emerging trends. What was in 2005 is no longer the same trend in 2023. So very interesting. There are a lot of comparatives that you have to look at, both in the region, in the global perspective, continental perspective. They're different. So every country has a different dispensation. So it's important that you're able to share your experiences when you go for these global interfaces, continental African-related interfaces, and even aterically. What drives me is the fact that
about tax justice, and you want to make sure that people are not taxed unfairly. Now, the people out there, they usually say, you overtaxing us, you're running people out of businesses. But I like that you've mentioned it, and you've actually said it very clearly. Now, what would you say how would you describe yourself as Stella now? Away from the tax, how would you describe Stella, the person?
Stella.
Yes.
Stella as a person is a wife. She's a mother. Stella loves the Lord. She's God-fearing and passionate about Christ and about just love. I love love, because love is an interesting aspect of life. Love is patient, love is kind, love is compassionate, love is many things, and love should drive the world. So that love is what you'll even apply to your work, you'll apply to your family, you'll apply to your friendships, to your social networks. So Stella is, of course, she's a daughter among 5 other children, and
I know that you mentioned one of the industry, but I want you to tell our viewers what are some of the challenges you face as a woman working in an industry that is branded a man's world.
maybe that then would start from when I joined URA. So when I got wind of the fact that there was a potential for employment in URA, I took interest and applied. So when I applied, there was some unwritten rule I had from somebody who had also applied, telling me that, you see, that legal department for which you seek to join has mostly women right now. So I know that they want men. So even as you apply, don't be expectant, because there's a very slim chance that you as a woman might be considered. It wasn't written because, of course, as institutions, government institutions, they're equal opportunity employers. So those are rules that won't be written. But this was seemingly someone who was from the inside and was telling me, you don't stand a chance. And I didn't hear that, because personally I'm a very positive and determined individual. So when I get to know, I still put in and I stood firm. They eventually invite us for interviews, written interviews. We sat through those assessments, and when you sit through those assessments, out of the 40, then we get, I think they took 11 coming on for the orals. So when we sit for the oral exams, I then emerge one among the 6 that were employed. And out of the 6, I was the only lady. So there were 5 males and 1 female. So that just increased the drive, and it gives you some confidence, saying, these things can be done. Even where they say that it's a man's world. Yes, here I am. I'm a woman, and I got a chance to work in URA. So I was grateful, but also that got into the person that I became: determined, focused, confident, but also resilient of whatever might come through. So fortunately, when I joined legal services, and interestingly, my bosses have all been ladies. In that man's world, they've only been ladies. So those were my mentors. They turned out my mentors, and they're women that need no introduction. The latest being Lady Justice Patience Tumusime Rubagumya. She was my supervisor. She was my mentor, and there she is. She succeeded, and then she went against the odds, and she's Lady Justice as we speak. That's not so far away, just a few months away, that when she was appointed by the president. Then the other is Doris Akol. Again, she needs no introduction. Doris was my first supervisor when I joined URA. She was an assistant commissioner, board affairs, policy and rulings. She was in my interview panel, and so I got in. And then there's Jennifer Musisi. No introduction still. She was the commissioner, legal services at the point. So she supervised me. And then we have Alan Kajina, who was CG then. So I've not had a male supervisor. I've only had female bosses, and they've inspired me. So you look at how they go through their career paths. They teach you, they mentor you to do the right things, to look at the right spaces, and here we are. So for me, I think it's something that I had at the back of my mind from the start. But yet I know that there's a special focus to make sure that women stand out in tax. And that leads me into another perspective on the continental zone. So continentally, there is an institution called African Tax Administrators Forum. That forum is a forum that brings together the revenue entities all over Africa, headquartered in South Africa, but it was born in Uganda. So I am a coordinator for ATAF. Every country has one coordinator from their revenue entities. So I'm a coordinator for ATAF. So ATAF also recognized the fact that women need to have representation in tax. So they started a program called Women in Tax. And so this looks at gender, issues of inequality, issues of women being represented in revenue authorities. But fortunately, URA has done very well. Our statistics look very good in terms of women in tax. Yes.
Yeah, so Stella, speaking of, you mentioned somewhere along the way mentorship. You're mentored by women, which is a beautiful thing. And I don't think many people recognize that there are actually women who are in tax and they are doing well and they're okay. Now, when it comes to mentorship, are there people you're mentoring? Is there someone you're hand-holding? It could be 1 or 2 people, or 3, or a group. Are there people you're mentoring? That's now that you're mentored, so you have to put it to someone else as well. Share the knowledge, share the path. You could just tell us a little bit about it.
Okay, thank you. Mentorship is a very important facet of the tax career, but anyway, even for any career.
Yes.
But then, because I was mentored by women, without a doubt, I mentor women. I get to interface with quite a number of them when they join URA. When they walk into my office for a chat, just to say hello, I'll sit them down and tell them the do's, the don'ts, areas to look out, encourage them. Because being a woman, there's a delicate balance. You have to have babies, you have to family, you have to tend to family, yet you have to work as much. So we speak through that. I'm deliberate in as far as encouraging women and ensuring that they keep their focus and that nothing should sway them from focusing on their work. But yet it's possible, really possible, to balance between family and unemployment. So yes, I'm mentoring women, but of course mentoring young ones, all over men or women. But I have a special focus for women. When I see one that has potential, I'll sit them down and then we have a chat and give them the focus that they desire so that you're able to inspire others to succeed.
You earlier mentioned that you're a mother. Now, in the line of being a mother, being employed, being a career woman, how do you manage all this? Because in history, it is known that most times you can't do it all. As a woman, sometimes either one suffers or one thrives. So for you, how have you managed to balance between career, marriage, being a mom, and someone who is just out there and making sure they are conquering their.
Yes, I mentioned earlier delicate balance, but I think one of the things that has enabled me do that, I hope successfully, is God. God being our helper, God guides our footsteps, and so for me, each day that I wake up, you commit the day to God. But back to reality, apart from the spirituality, is the support, that you get from home. I have a supportive spouse. I have a supportive workforce at home. And so that makes it a little easy. Of course, not to say that you will detach yourself from your role. When you're a mother, and so you have to do those things. You have to go visit children at school, you have to be present. So I plan when I get to know that I have a school event that I have to go for. You plan well in advance. If you have to go through the lunchtime, you go and make sure you're there on time. But they'd be able to get back to your work, just ensuring that you do not lose focus.
Okay, that's quite interesting to know that you're actually killing it on all fronts. It is very hard for someone to say that I'm doing it all. Usually, either the family suffers or the job suffers. So that brings me to the question of there are young people out there watching this show, especially young women. What would you tell them to motivate them that this is not something that is out of the world? It is something doable. You can actually do it, and it is okay to actually come into spaces that are branded men's world. What would you tell young girls watching this show?
So for young girls, I will encourage them and tell them, from even before we were born, God knew us. God determined our paths. But yet, you have a very big chance to play in knowing who you are. Don't be dissuaded by by negative talk. Like I told you, for me when I was joining, I had that yes, this is a man's chance. Women wouldn't stand an opportunity. But then you keep the focus, keep the determination, and then have the zeal. Also be versatile. Versatile, for me, you'll ask me to, 1 minute I'm the mother, 1 minute I'm the assistant commissioner, 1 minute I'm the commissioner, 1 minute I'm an MC, 1 minute. So just be open to challenges. When you're open to challenges, they will expose you, and that exposure will give you the confidence, even in areas that you think are gray. As a matter of fact, I never studied tax in law school because I had a fear for numbers. Like is common with many lawyers, they're not very brave with numbers. So I didn't study tax in law school. But yet, when a chance came to work in URA, I did a tax assessment. The exam was tax, but I succeeded. So you have to be open to take on the challenges, because these things that a man can do, a woman can do. There is no really distinction, and that we have very many examples that can be cited. We see them every day.
Yes.
And so you have to remain focused, remain determined, keep the eyes on the ball, because it just takes you to succeed and no one else. Yes.
I love that you said keep the eyes on the ball, be focused, be determined, and be versatile. You know, sometimes when women get into workspaces, they fail to adjust to certain things, but it's good that you've put it out there. At least for someone to thrive, they have to be able to do everything and also switch and flip and be able to manage and handle all these things. Now, earlier on in our conversation, you indicated that you're in charity. Yeah, I love charity. I love that you mentioned it, and we just want to hear about it. What is it that you do for charity?
Um, there is an orphanage. That orphanage is called God's Grace Children's Home. It's in Nakauka. It's a home that has orphans, it has needy children, and I'm an advocate for those children. I'm a board member in that institution. And so the passion, of course, comes from the love for Christ, but the love for humanity, which is a very important facet of the work that we do. You know, even as tax collectors, hard as it is, it's important that along the way you're human. You think about how does this person's business survive if this this assessment is collected off his business. So you need to have that at the back of your mind, because people, they have families to run. So that charity was really drawn by the fact that I have love for children, but also love for humanity. Love conquers all. It is something that I mention, I live with, I walk by. So that I've supported that children's home since 2014. And so occasionally we visit, go share with them, share love. And then I also advocate for their needs. Like I engage somebody to give them some 25 acres where they do farming. I have one that I take care of at my home. He studies, and he in a nearby school. We've handheld him since, I think, for 3 years now. He's in senior 5. But when you look at the difference that you're able to make in those children's life, it's quite, it's priceless. So when you look at this, the smiles, when you look at the impact, when you're able to give them food, and, you know, to encourage them and remind them that, you know, we love you. Yes, that really brings a lot of joy in my heart. For me, that is something that brings so much peace. Outside tax collection, it gives you the human face of life, because that is the reality. That's the reality. So I'm particular about charity, and I'll go all the way for those children. When you go and visit them and they'll come and hug you, and 10 of them all at a go, it's just very exciting. Yes, yes, yes.
You mentioned that you're a mother of 4 boys, yeah? And it's different. You said you're a mother of 4 boys and then you mentor young women.
Yes.
How does that work for you? Isn't there like a kind of character switch you have to make? Because you have boys on one hand, and then here you have ladies, and then you have children. How does that work for you?
Yes, I mentor, like I mentioned earlier, I mentor both women and men. So the fact that I have the boys doesn't detach me from, I don't lose anything, basically. So, and also because I was mentored by women, like I mentioned earlier, I see no difference. It's, I do it seamlessly, mentor the women, because I was mentored by women, because I'm a woman. The boys at home notwithstanding, but I still also mentor boys. I mentor males when they walk into my office. The same thing I'll do for a woman is the same I'll do for man, but for men. But the dynamics will be different, because for women, there's a different dispensation when it comes to family, when it comes to childbirth, when it comes to cooking, yes, over the weekend. So you have to be able to do all those things at the same time. But of course, women are also gifted. They're able to do so many things that they really juggle. They will be the jack of all trades. They will juggle and yet come out very successful.
Okay.
Yes.
That is quite interesting to actually know that you have boys on one hand, you mentor them, you raise them, and then you have ladies and women you're mentoring on the other side.
Yes, yes.
It is quite an interesting picture and perspective. So would you paint for us or explain to us some of the tax laws that encourage and enable women to thrive in business, for instance?
So as a country, we do not have specific tax laws that are designed for women, because, you know, tax is also supposed to be an area that provides an equal opportunity for all Ugandan citizens.
Yes.
So there is nothing particular for women. However, again, our tax regime and our economy is largely informal.
Yes.
So informally, you have mostly the women. They're the ones who do the small businesses. They're those who maybe will be the most illiterate.
Yes.
So we have laws that support the informal sector. And that is like the presumptive regime. That regime really dictates that you don't have to keep records. If you don't have the records, there is a figure that is not as much as the bigger businesses. Yes, you'll be expected to pay some money, but maybe not as much as the structured businesses. So for those ones, you see there are very many women in that sector. Then we also have the agricultural sector. You know, women do a lot of subsistence, but women are also in agriculture. So the agricultural sector has a lot of incentives at importation, things like pesticides, things like chicken feed. Those are exempt at importation. So those, again, come to the advantage of women. Then we have a regime that has incentives for strategic sectors, manufacturing. You know that many factories really hire women. You see them on a daily running along Namamve there, women. So we have a lot of incentives for manufacturing. We have incentives for footwear business. We have incentives for technology, IT. So now all those you see eventually come to the benefit of women. So women are catered for tax purposes.
Okay, that's really good to know. Now, as we wind up our show, I would just like you to give us some of your parting shots as a woman in tax, as a mother, and as a wife. Just quick parting shots.
As a woman,
Yes.
let's keep the focus. Keep our eyes on the ball. When you know that you have a job to do, give it your very best shot. Don't let the fact that you're a woman be the one to disadvantage you and others. So women can be very resilient. So be resilient, work to your very best, excel. And when you do that, then you're able to dispel all the things that people say that women will not be able to handle. And then also, of course, as a mother, you remain a mother even as you work. Again, you expected to have the balance. You can have the balance. Plan your time well. Make sure you don't lose the fact of mothering your children or being that wife, the supportive wife that you have to be when it comes to going to church, when it comes to leading the others. You should be able to do it so that you're able to perform your role seamlessly. These are things that have been done before. We are not the first, and they can still be done. So keep the focus, keep the determination, work hard. You have the energies. Women are trained to juggle. We can do all these things. And so, yes. So as a career person, when you have to study, because I hold a master's degree, I've done very many trainings also. But I've been able to do those as I work, and even as I build my family, as I grow my family. I've done all those things while being, but yet nothing suffered. I can't say anything suffered. As a matter of fact, I did the master's. I never took study leave because my work was demanding. But I was able to do that successfully. So we can do all these things again. Just keep the focus, read hard, work hard, and give everything the attention it deserves. Of course, planning is a very important facet of the work that we do. So as a woman, you have to plan your time at all times. But then, most importantly, you surrender whatever you have to do before the Almighty, because God guides our footsteps. He leads us. He's the light upon our feet. So He should be able to give us the wisdom to do those things. We constantly have to appeal to His wisdom. And when that is done, everything falls in line.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Stella, for joining us today. I love the facets. I've picked quite a number of things that I'm going to actually apply in my life, and I'm hoping that the women out there watching, even if it's men, I'm sure they've picked something, they will get something, even if it's just one thing. Personally, I like the part where you say, be intentional with your time, plan your time, be focused and determined. And I like that you did not have anything to do with, you didn't give us like a sort of excuse not to do it all. Yeah, and you just kept on saying, do it all, you can do it all, you're not the first person. And I think that's a very important thing for anyone to have. For anyone who wants to thrive, they should be able not to give the excuses. I've not had even one single excuse. And I like that so much. Thank you so much. And I hope that you still win out there like you've always won.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching the show. Until next time.
Thank you for having me.
Uganda Revenue Authority, developing Uganda together.